What's up, guys? We are back with another Mythic Legion's Necronominus wave review, taking a look at the literal big one. This time around, we're taking a look at UCCZAJK here. So this is a tribute figure in this wave. So this is a tribute to Greg, who works with the Horsemen. He's part of the warehouse crew. He is the 15-foot tall gentleman that you'll see if you go to Legion's Con. And so he got this big monster ogre scale figure, which just looks absolutely rad to me. I've been really curious about this figure. I mean, well, for over 2 years now at this point. So this guy comes in the ogre size style box. So it's an oversized packaging, a box instead of the clamshell kind of packaging, figure in the window. And then we've got all of that new sort of environmental style artwork that we've got from Nate Barch with a humongous shot of the figure on the back done up in Nate style, which I absolutely love. I really think it's cool when some specific figures like this get a shot on the artwork itself. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our UCCZAJK from the Necronominus wave, our Greg tribute, our ogre scale figure, and something that is just, I don't know, cool looking. I've really been wanting to get this guy in hand after seeing him at Legion's Con for years now, just to get a taste of him and see exactly what's going on, because it's a striking figure. It's, if anything, it's one that just draws your eye in because of, I mean, look at it. So let's see what he can do, see how he moves around. If you're familiar with ogres, you kind of know what to expect here. He's very similar, but not exactly the same. So you've got a head that can swivel a little bit. You've got some, bobbing side to side. He looks up a little bit and down a little bit. Now, you do have to contend with this collar. It is seated into like a ring around his neck. There's two little nubs that will go in there. It's okay. I feel like it's going to want to move a lot. The pauldrons are really similar. They seem fairly unstable to me. They do move, of course. There is a second set of holes back here as well. So you've got an upper and a lower, depending on how you want to do that. It does help with a little bit of range on the arms when you want to move them out. So they go out about that far. I'm going to take the pauldrons off just so they don't fall while we do this. And you've got swivel. You've got your single jointed elbow, which has a lot better range than in the past. So this is one of the areas of improvement. Swivel, of course. Gauntlets are a separate piece that sits over top of the arm. It's not a separate piece as far as the whole wrist. So there is no forearm swivel. Wrist swivel, you've got hinges. And then at the waist, or torso rather, we've got swivel, and you've got a little bit of shimmy side to side and forward and backward. Pretty good forward. I mean, at least for the big guys. The other figures in the ogre scale were never that great either. This is a little bit of an improvement. We've got legs that go out. These are the newer style hips, and they are squeaky and creaky on mine. They go backwards, forward. You can hear that. Swivel. We've got single jointed, slightly better range here. Swiveling knees. I've seen people break these already. I haven't foreseen any issues, but watch out. And then at your ankles, you've got rocker. We've got our hinges down here as usual. And then you've also got rotation at the top of the ankle where that pegs in. So he's fairly normal. I mean, these guys are basically just large 1.0 style Legions figures, so nothing too crazy when it comes to articulation. The big areas to kind of focus on really are the arms and the knees, the elbows and the knees rather, just because they do have a slight bit better range than a lot of the earlier ogres have had. And in general, he moves fairly similarly to most regular Legions. I think ultimately, the visuals, the design, the sculpt, the idea behind this figure is infinitely more exciting or impressive than what he can do when it comes to being moved. We essentially knew how this thing was going to move. He definitely does have better range, than a lot of the other larger scale figures. But this guy is a whole different beast when it comes to the design and the actual implementation of this, creative process, whatever we want to call it, to actually make this guy. He's so much of a departure from the other ogre scale figures that, I mean, he really is his own thing. And I truly love this guy when it comes to the visuals. I think he looks amazing, essentially from top to bottom. The idea that this is taking inspiration from, like turning a cathedral in many ways into a suit of armor, I think it comes through pretty well here. One thing that I think definitely needs to be sort of talked about is his color. I think, and this is just me, I think this guy has the potential to maybe sort of be the next Dubon when it comes to what his promo pictures look like versus how he looks in hand. He looks a lot whiter in the promo pictures. He's not like stark white. He's not like Sir Ignatius white. He is a pearly, pearly silver, and I think it works really well. I've seen him in person at Legion's Con, so I knew what to expect with this thing. I do think he looks a little lighter in the promo shots than he actually is, but he shines and lights up like a beacon when you hit him with some lights. So, he definitely probably looks whiter than he actually does based on all the lights I'm hitting with now. So maybe that's a moot point. Either way, I think he looks awesome. I guess I already said that, but he does look tremendous. This is, again, a very different kind of ogre scale figure, fully armored figure, utilizing some old parts. I mean, like the feet are old and the calves are old. He's got Arakagor's pauldrons, for example, which I guess I didn't really pay attention to that. These are Arakagor's pauldrons, and they do connect, like I said, in two different spots, depending on how you want to move them around. It does help a little bit with that arm range if you put them in that top socket. So that's kind of neat. He does have the floating gauntlets. So the gauntlets are not his forearm. The forearm are their own piece. And then these sit over top, so you kind of lose that point of articulation if you even consider it that. But I think ultimately this figure is all about the visuals. He does have an impressive weapon that we're going to talk about here in a minute, but in terms of just the idea and the sculpt and the paintwork and the intricacy and all of these bright, very holy type of colors. One thing I can't get over with this guy, and it's something that maybe I just think of this reminds me of like Alexander from the Final Fantasy games, when you summon that holy summon. Like, this is that kind of thing. And it also has a very big, like, I don't know if this was intentional in any way, but it also has a very big Warhammer vibe to it with the collar piece. So the collar piece is separate. It sits over top of the torso, and I'll take it off and you can see what it looks like underneath there. It's just a bare torso mostly, but it does have some usage if you maybe want to have some grunts that don't have all of the same stuff on them. But he's got this humongous crest with Latin on it, and you've got Aetheron's wings and the Heavens brand in there. And this is another one of those little areas that is just crammed full of detail. I mean, you can see the individual feathers carved out in those wings. It's amazing. It's really great. And another example, a big example in a small space of just where this line has come and what we can expect going forward, because we would have never ever gotten anything like this in the early waves of Legions. And I think it's a great testament again to kind of where things have come and where we started with this line. And then he's capped off with, I mean, there's really so many things to say, but also so few things to say at the same time when it comes to just how cool this guy looks. It's amazing. And the head is no different. Tons of detail, tons of paint, tons of different textures, a little bit of damage in there. But I love this mix of the silvery pearl and the gold and the purple, all that kind of stuff. It looks amazing. And this also furthers that idea of, a cathedral type of thing going on with all of that filigree detail and the spires that sort of shoot out, all of that kind of stuff. It works really well. And the idea that they're trying to sell with that, I think, comes through really well once you get this guy in hand. He's an imposing piece, very massive, very heavy, huge shelf presence. But I mean, it's this gleaming, holy, monstrous knight. It doesn't get much cooler than this from a purely visual standpoint for me. Now, as far as accessories goes, the ogre scales typically don't have a lot of stuff. It's generally just a weapon, and UCCZAJK is basically the same outside of the fact that he does have an extra head sculpt. So he's got the thing going on where we can turn a good guy into a bad guy, and you've got a skull to replace that giant helmet. And of course, he's listed as an ogre, which means he's a greenskin, which means he's got the tusks that stick out the side. So you've got a very unique looking skull, something we've not really seen before. I really like this idea, just in general, not just with him, but in general, of giving the good guys skeletal faces to turn them, basically. I think that's neat. I do wish these figures would start to come with extra hands. I feel like he could really use some style posy grasping hands, would look really cool, but all he has are our gripping hands. Beyond that, he does have his big Warhammer, which is also the big source of contention with this guy because it is just ungodly heavy. And I'm going to move it. Right now, it's leaning against him so he can do a one-handed pose. I'm almost certain this is intended to be used two-handed. Despite, his size, he should be able to wield this single-handedly. But it's just so heavy. It weighs, and I did weigh it, it weighs 86 grams. For comparison, Necronominus himself, with everything on him, weighs 200 grams. It's a humongous weight sitting out in front of the figure on what is one of these smaller joints. So if I were to move it, it's just gonna it's going to do that. Like, it just flops and flips all over the place. It really seems like it's meant to be held with two hands. You can try to tighten the hand joints. Like, I've tightened this one up with like super glue and then, you know, moving it around so it doesn't actually glue itself shut, but just to build up that peg. It does help a little bit, but ultimately you're going to have to play a balancing act to get this thing to sit correctly, which is kind of unfortunate. You know, nobody wants to have to do that. And it does look amazing. It's got this, you know, like face on there. It's like a very like Viking Zeus looking thing almost, which is pretty neat. I do wish it had a little bit more paint on it. I feel like it could use a little bit more of that gold accent color, but it is incredibly bright and striking. And it is a very cool looking weapon. The sculpt is terrific and the detail on it is just insane, really, because there's so much surface area. It does still have the same thing we've seen forever now with this handle, and then you also get a shorter one. It's got a little bit of paint on it. There's like a steely blue color in there in addition to the silver, but that's all he comes with. And it's not to say he doesn't really need more. Like, this is fine. At the end of the day, it's fine. It's a giant weapon. He looks cool holding it, but it is going to be a source of frustration, probably is the better word to use. A little bit of a source of frustration just to get him to hold it, get him posed correctly, and then, of course, you know, not worry about him falling down. So yeah, overall, this figure is pretty solid, but he's also, like I've said, he's kind of frustrating, and that's really what I think a lot of people are going to come away with, at least at first. I feel like there's going to be a lot more fun to be had with him as you figure things out, but there's a lot of stuff about him that, I don't know, it's just kind of frustrating. The pauldrons are not the greatest to actually get in there. I feel like they don't want to sit in there very well. And the collar piece, until you get it just right, it can flop around too. It's not the end of the world. It's certainly not going anywhere, but it's one more thing that just sort of seems to be sitting on him unless you figure out exactly how to slot those little nubbins right in there. And then, of course, you've got the hammer to deal with, which is its own balancing act. Beyond that, you know, beyond this, the so-called frustration aspect of him, he's an amazing figure. Like, there's a lot more range on these limbs than we've seen historically with the ogres, and he does look amazing. Like, you can't discount that at all. A lot of the visual aspect of this figure, specifically the collar and that helmet, are just a level above anything else we've seen in these larger style figures. I really think they did a great job from sculpt and paint and everything like that, but there's a few little nitpicky things here and there that definitely do lead to a little bit of frustration. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legion's Necronominus Wave, UCCZAJK. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.